I was halfway through presenting Q4 projections when she walked in wearing my title on her badge. Director of Strategic Operations, Ava Monroe. Gold letters. Fresh laminate. Still swinging on the lanyard like it was proud of itself. At first I thought it was a mistake. A printing error. Sure must have messed something up, right? But then everyone started clapping. My team. My boss. Even the new intern I trained last week. I froze mid-slide. My hands still resting on the conference table, the projection remote warm in my palm, while Ava waved like she just won an award she didn't compete for. Thanks for the warm transition, she said, smiling directly at me. Transition? That word hung in the air like the smell of burnt coffee, bitter and impossible to ignore. I hadn't transitioned anything. No memo. No meeting. No heads up. I was still leading the team yesterday. I still had project ownership this morning. My name was on the report she was holding in her hand. So why the hell was she standing there smiling like she earned it? My chest went hot. Not from rage, not yet, but from confusion. My mind tried to run the math. Maybe I was being shifted to a new role? Maybe it was temporary? But no. No one was looking at me. They were all looking at her. I swallowed hard and sat back down. And that's when it hit me. They had replaced me. Silently. Coldly. With no warning. And not with someone qualified. Not with someone experienced. But with the CEO's daughter. Fresh out of grad school, probably still had student loan stickers on her laptop. I wasn't fired. I was erased. My hands were still resting on the edge of the table, and I felt myself dig my nails into the wood. No one noticed. No one cared. The room was full of fake claps and forced enthusiasm. Ava beamed like a debutante at her first ball. And in that moment, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smiled. Because she had no idea what she just walked into. And I had something she didn't know existed. Clause 12. 3 years ago I negotiated it quietly into my contract. A safety net. A nuclear option. It only activates if I'm removed without cause or proper process. Which is exactly what just happened. Ava stood there basking in attention she didn't earn, completely unaware she'd just triggered a countdown clock. I closed my laptop slowly, still smiling. Let her enjoy this moment. It wouldn't last long. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there taking mental notes. After the meeting ended, I walked straight to my desk and pulled up my contract. Page 9. Section 12.4. There it was, buried in legal language most people skip over. In the event of role displacement without documented cause or formal notification, employee retains right to full compensation review, arbitration, and potential board escalation. I'd fought for this clause 3 years ago during the Falcon merger. Back then I worked 19-hour days keeping this company from folding. I handled ops, legal, even some PR when things got messy. And when the dust settled, I didn't ask for flowers or a promotion. I asked for protection. The lawyers thought I was paranoid. My manager thought I was overthinking. But I knew better. I'd seen too many good people pushed out quietly, replaced by someone's nephew or college buddy. So I got it in writing. Now, sitting at my desk with my coffee gone cold, I realized my paranoia had been preparation. I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Evidence. Then I started documenting everything. I emailed HR that afternoon. Simple message, can we discuss my role transition? No response. I called the next morning. Voicemail. I walked by their desks twice. They avoided eye contact like I was contagious. My calendar started emptying out. Meetings I was leading suddenly had Ava Monroe listed as the organizer. My access to key project folders? Gone by Wednesday. Budget dashboards I built from scratch? Blocked. It was like I never existed. No explanation. No termination letter. No severance discussion. Just deleted. They thought they were being clever. Pushing me out slowly, hoping I'd quit on my own so they wouldn't have to deal with paperwork or legal risk. But they forgot something important. I keep copies. Every project file. Every email thread. Every performance review. I had backups on my personal drive, time-stamped and organized. 3 years of flawless work, documented and ready. I smiled to myself as I uploaded another batch of files to my secure cloud storage. They were trying to erase me. But I was building a case they couldn't ignore. Ava walked the halls like she owned the place. Like being the CEO's daughter meant she built the company herself. She had no idea what ops even did. I watched her in meetings, nodding along while people explained basic workflow concepts. She said things like, leverage the synergies, and optimize human capital, like she was reading buzzwords off a napkin. And everyone smiled, terrified to correct her. Because she wasn't just Ava. She was Mr. Monroe's little girl. The golden child who could do no wrong. She posted on LinkedIn that first week. Thrilled to lead the new vision for strategic ops. Excited to bring fresh perspective and innovation. Fresh perspective. Translation: she had no idea what she was doing. I saw her in the break room once, asking an analyst what Q4 stood for. He thought she was joking. She wasn't. Another time she canceled our weekly team check-in because it didn't align with her energy. Her energy. We had deadlines. We had clients. But sure, let's talk about energy. I didn't say anything. I just watched. And took notes. Because incompetence always exposes itself. You just have to be patient enough to let it. Then she sent the wrong report to client Epsilon. I was copied on the email by accident. Probably some autofill mistake. I opened the attachment and my stomach dropped. Wrong data. Wrong projections. Wrong quarter. She'd sent them last year's forecast with this year's numbers plugged in randomly. It made no sense. Any analyst would have caught it in 30 seconds. But Ava wasn't an analyst. She was a disaster with a badge. I watched the email thread explode. The client was confused. Then annoyed. Then furious. Is this a joke? They wrote back. Ava panicked. She forwarded it to me, finally acknowledging I existed, with a frantic message. Can you fix this? I stared at my screen for a long moment. I could fix it. Easily. I'd built that report template myself. But if I did, she'd take credit. She'd learn nothing. And the company would keep pretending she was competent. So I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the entire email chain to my personal account and added it to my evidence folder. Let her drown. I wasn't her life raft. Client Epsilon threatened to pull their contract by end of day. Someone else on the team fixed it. Probably out of fear. Ava posted another LinkedIn selfie that afternoon. Grateful for my amazing team. Leadership is about trust. My hands were still shaking from watching her nearly destroy a multi-million-dollar account. But she got to smile for the camera and pretend she saved the day. That's when I realized something. She wasn't just incompetent. She was dangerous. And the company was protecting her because of who her father was. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and my laptop. I opened my contract again and reread Clause 12 slowly. It wasn't just about severance. It was about accountability. If I could prove I was removed without cause, and if I could show that my removal led to measurable harm, I could trigger a formal review. Not just with HR. With the board. I started building a timeline. Day 1. Ava announced as director with no warning. Day 3. My access restricted. Day 7. Client Epsilon nearly lost. Day 10. Team morale visibly down. I had emails. I had timestamps. I had proof. I wasn't angry anymore. I was strategic. I started talking to Paul, the janitor. People think janitors are invisible. They're not. They're just underestimated. Paul had been with the company for 15 years. He cleaned the executive floor, the break rooms, the conference rooms. And people talked around him like he wasn't there. I bought him a coffee one morning and asked how things were going. He looked at me carefully, then sighed. It's bad, he said quietly. Real bad. He told me things I hadn't seen from my corner desk. Ava yelling at analysts when they corrected her. Canceling client calls last minute. Blaming her assistant for mistakes she made herself. She threw a binder at someone last week, Paul said, shaking his head. Missed. Hit the wall. Left a dent. I asked if anyone reported it. He laughed bitterly. To who? Her dad. I thanked him and made a note in my phone. Hostile work environment. Witness testimony available. The case was building itself. All I had to do was keep listening. And keep my mouth shut. Because the moment I showed my hand too early, they'd find a way to bury me. The whisper started by week 3. Clients were nervous. Deadlines were being missed. The team looked exhausted. Ava was flailing and the pressure was showing. I watched it all unravel from my corner seat. Technically still employed, just invisible. She'd snap at people in meetings. She'd change directions mid-project, confusing everyone. She'd take credit for ideas that weren't hers and blame others when things went wrong. And nobody said anything, because she was untouchable. But I wasn't panicking. I was building something. A document. Clean. Organized. Unemotional. 23 pages of financial missteps, HR complaints, NDA breaches, and operational failures under Ava's leadership. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't editorialize. I just listed facts, dates, emails, witness accounts, revenue impact. I called it the burn report. And I saved it in 3 separate places. Because when the time came, I wanted to be ready. I wasn't sabotaging her. She was doing that all by herself. I was just making sure someone was paying attention. And soon that someone would be the board. 14 days. That's what Clause 12 gave them once triggered. I sent the legal notice at 8:59 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Subject line: Formal notice, Clause 12 activation. Attached: full documentation of wrongful removal, role duplication, procedural violations, and my formal intent to settle or escalate to arbitration. I CC'd HR, legal, and my personal attorney. Then I hit send. And I waited. The response came in 47 minutes. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss this matter. I smiled. They were scared. Good. I replied with my availability and added one line. I expect full transparency and documented resolution within the 14-day window per contract terms. Professional. Polite. Unshakable. The clock had started ticking. And they knew it. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. For the first time in weeks I felt calm. Because I wasn't reacting anymore. I was in control. And Clause 12 was about to remind them why I negotiated it in the first place. They thought they could erase me quietly. They were wrong. I watched Mr. Monroe at the company town hall that week. He stood on stage beaming at Ava like she was the second coming of Steve Jobs in stilettos. My daughter brings fresh energy and bold vision, he said, voice swelling with pride. The room clapped. I didn't. He never asked what she actually did. He never reviewed her work. He just saw his little girl playing executive and assumed she was brilliant. She waved her hands a lot. Said ecosystem and disruptive innovation in every sentence. Rode his blind faith straight into disaster. He built this company from nothing. 30 years of smart decisions and hard work. But he raised a princess, not a leader. And now his legacy was crumbling because he couldn't see past his own pride. I felt a flicker of pity. Then I remembered how easily he let them erase me. How he never questioned it. How he probably signed off on it himself. The pity disappeared. He made his choice. Now he'd live with the consequences. After the town hall, I added his speech to my evidence folder. CEO publicly endorses unqualified replacement. The burn report was almost complete. Ava finally got called into legal. I was in the break room when I saw her march down the hallway, chin up, heels clicking confidently. She looked like she was about to handle some minor paperwork. 30 minutes later, she came out looking like she'd been slapped by policy itself. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. She didn't look at anyone as she walked back to her office and closed the door. I sipped my coffee slowly. The lawyers had found Clause 12. They'd probably explained to her what it meant. What I could do. What the company risked if they didn't handle this correctly. She didn't even know what it was an hour ago. Now she knew I wasn't going away quietly. I threw my cup away and headed back to my desk. My phone buzzed. Email from legal. Meeting scheduled for Thursday 2 p.m. Please bring any additional documentation. I smiled. They wanted to settle. Which meant they knew I had them. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Ava tried to freeze me out of my systems the next day. I logged in that morning and got an access denied message on half my tools. She thought removing my login would work. It didn't. I'd built half the back-end infrastructure myself 3 years ago. I had legacy access no one else even knew existed. Admin credentials buried in old documentation, backup portals I'd created for emergencies. I logged in through the side door and kept working. And I kept watching. She was spiraling. I saw her trying to pull reports she didn't understand. Clicking through dashboards like she was guessing. She deleted an entire folder by accident. One that held templates for client proposals. I had backups. She didn't. I didn't offer to help. I just saved screenshots of every mistake. She was handing me evidence faster than I could document it. By noon, she'd locked herself out of the budgeting tool. By 3 p.m. she was on the phone with IT, voice shrill and frustrated. I worked quietly at my desk, headphones on, face neutral. Let her struggle. I wasn't her IT support. I was her reckoning. Client X refused to speak with Ava. They called the main line and specifically requested me by name. "We don't trust someone who thought Q4 was a budget, not a time frame," the client said flatly. Their words, not mine. The receptionist transferred the call to Ava anyway. It lasted 4 minutes. The client hung up and called back asking for me again. This time they got transferred to my manager. He looked panicked. By lunch, the board had heard about it. By end of day, I got an email from a board member I'd worked with during the Falcon merger. "Tara, can we talk?" I replied immediately. "Absolutely. When works for you." We scheduled a call for the next morning. I printed out my performance reviews, my client retention metrics, and my project success rates. Then I added them to a folder labeled Boardroom Seat. Because that's exactly where this was headed. And when I walked into that room, I wasn't going to beg for my job back. I was going to show them what they'd lost. And what Ava could never replace. The board meeting was in a small conference room on the executive floor. Just me and 2 board members, Linda Cho and Marcus Green. They were polite but serious. I didn't waste time. I opened my laptop and showed them numbers. Performance slides. Client retention rates. Revenue growth under my leadership. Then I showed them Ava's track record. 3 weeks. 4 major mistakes. 2 client complaints. 1 near loss of a multi-million-dollar contract. I didn't editorialize. I let the data speak. Linda's face tightened as she scrolled through the evidence. Marcus leaned back and exhaled slowly. "Why didn't you escalate this sooner?" he asked. I met his eyes. I was removed from my role without warning or cause. I had no access to escalate. Linda looked at Marcus. He nodded. "We'll handle this," Linda said quietly. I closed my laptop. "I'm not asking for my job back. I'm asking for accountability." They looked surprised. "Then what do you want?" Marcus asked. I smiled. "I want them to honor my contract. And I want it documented that this never should have happened." They agreed to follow up within 48 hours. I left that room feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I spent the next 2 days finalizing the burn report. 23 pages. Single-spaced. Fully sourced. No exaggeration. No emotion. Just facts. Section 1. Timeline of removal. Section 2. Ava's performance failures. Section 3. Financial impact. Section 4. Witness testimonies. Section 5. Contract violations. I included everything. Emails. Screenshots. Audio recordings from meetings I was still invited to by accident. Paul's statements. Client complaints. I formatted it like a legal brief. Clean, professional, undeniable. Then I saved 3 copies. 1 on my secure cloud, 1 on an external drive, and 1 printed and locked in my home safe. I wasn't going to arbitration hoping to win. I was going armed with proof they couldn't refute. And if they tried to bury me, I'd bury them first. The burn report wasn't just evidence. It was a nuclear option. And I was ready to use it. I sent 1 email. 1 line. Per clause 12, please confirm severance and corrective action within 48 hours or I proceed to arbitration. No threat. Just law. I CC'd my attorney and the board members I'd met with. Then I waited. The response came in 90 minutes. "We'd like to discuss a resolution. Can you meet tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I replied, "Yes. I'll bring my attorney." That last part made them nervous. I could feel it through the screen. They thought I'd come alone. Vulnerable. Easy to negotiate down. But I wasn't playing their game anymore. I was playing mine. The next morning I walked into that conference room in a blazer and heels, my attorney beside me, a printed copy of the burn report in my hands. Legal was there. Sure was there. A board representative was there. Ava wasn't. Neither was Mr. Monroe. I set the report on the table. "Let's talk about accountability," I said calmly. And their faces told me everything I needed to know. They knew they'd lost. 2 days later, the PR crisis hit. An internal DI report leaked. It detailed several complaints about leadership dismissing employee concerns, particularly around equity and workplace culture. And right there in the summary, one line stood out. Director A. Monroe dismissed DI initiatives as optics over action during an all-hands meeting. LinkedIn exploded. So did internal Slack. Employees who'd been quiet suddenly weren't. Comments poured in. Screenshots circulated. People demanded answers. The board called an emergency session. Ava tried to do damage control with a corporate apology post, but it was too late. She wasn't just incompetent now. She was a liability. A PR problem. And companies don't protect liabilities, they cut them loose. I watched it unfold from my couch with a cup of tea, almost feeling bad. Almost. But then I remembered her smug smile that first day. Thanks for the warm transition. Yeah. She earned this. They offered me a settlement. 6 figures. Full severance. Retirement contributions. Benefits extended for a year. But I didn't just want money. I wanted accountability. So I negotiated one more thing. A clause added to Ava's file. No promotion, no transfer, no leadership role, pending internal audit. And she had to sign it too. They hesitated. I stood up to leave. They agreed. The paperwork came through the next day. I read every line twice, then signed. My attorney signed as witness. I walked out of that building with a check, a severance package, and something more valuable than both. Proof that I didn't just survive. I won. On my terms. Ava might still have her badge. But she'd never have her credibility back. And in this industry, credibility is everything. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't pack a box in front of everyone. I came in after hours, cleared my desk, and left my badge on the table. No drama. No tears. No final speech. I just disappeared. The next morning, Ava walked into the office and found my desk empty. She asked around. No one knew where I went. HR wouldn't tell her. She must have felt the shift in the room, the way people looked at her now. Not with fear. With doubt. I heard later that she tried to call a team meeting. Half the team didn't show up. The other half barely made eye contact. She stood there in the conference room alone, holding papers no one cared about. And for the first time she understood what I'd felt that first day. Erased. Except this time it was her own doing. I was already 2 states away, sitting on my balcony with my laptop, planning my next move. No regrets. Just freedom. They brought in external consultants 2 weeks later. A full operational audit. Every decision Ava made was now under review. Every misstep documented. Every failure traced back to its source. And every single one of my documents, time-stamped, organized, verified, became the blueprint for her downfall. The consultants interviewed the team. Paul testified about the hostile environment. Clients gave statements about her incompetence. Even the intern I'd trained admitted she had no idea what Ava was doing half the time. The audit report came back brutal. Leadership transition executed without proper due diligence. Operational failures directly linked to unqualified replacement. Recommend immediate corrective action. Recommend. That was corporate speak for. Fix this or we're all liable. Ava tried to spin it. She couldn't. The facts were too loud. And I was the ghost who made sure every single one of them was documented. Mr. Monroe stepped down 3 weeks later. They called it a sabbatical. Health reasons. Family time. But everyone knew the truth. The board gave him a choice. Step down quietly or take the public hit with his daughter. He blinked first. I read the announcement from my new home office. After 30 years of dedicated service, CEO Richard Monroe will be stepping back to focus on personal matters. We thank him for his leadership. Translation: we're cutting our losses. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. He built something good. Then he let ego and nepotism destroy it. And now his legacy would always have an asterisk. The man who gave his unqualified daughter a role she couldn't handle. The man who erased a loyal employee to make space for failure. He didn't deserve pity. But I gave him a moment of silence anyway. Then I closed the article and got back to work. My work. On my terms. Ava was removed the following Monday. Not reassigned. Not transitioned. Security disabled her badge at 9 a.m. She was escorted out by 9:15. She didn't even get to finish her coffee. I got the news from a former colleague who texted me a single word. Gone. I sat there staring at my phone for a long moment. Then I smiled. Poetic, really. She walked in wearing my title. Left without a job. I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it. I just closed that chapter and moved on. Because revenge isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. She took something from me. I took my power back. And that was enough. I launched my own consulting firm 2 months later. Operations strategy. Process optimization. Leadership training. 3 ex-colleagues followed me. 2 clients reached out before I even finished building the website. I worked from home. Set my own hours. Chose my own projects. No bosses. No politics. No corporate games. Just value. Within 6 months I was booked solid. Within a year I doubled my income. I hired an assistant. Then a project manager. Then 2 junior consultants. We worked remotely. We respected boundaries. We celebrated wins. And every time someone asked how I built it so fast, I smiled and said, I spent years learning what not to do. Ava taught me that lesson the hard way. But I turned it into something worth building. And that's the difference between us. She inherited power. I earned it. One last twist. During my settlement, I'd quietly added Clause 13. A 2-year non-compete for Ava. She couldn't touch strategic operations in this state until 2027. I didn't just remove her from the company. I exiled her from the industry. She'd have to start over somewhere else. In a different field. With a reputation she couldn't shake. Meanwhile, I built something better. People like her think power is inherited. That a last name or a corner office makes them untouchable. But power isn't given. It's built. Quietly. Strategically. Brick by brick. I didn't win by getting even. I won by walking away while they collapsed behind me. And now, every time I sign a contract with a new client, I think about that first day. Ava walking in with my title. Me sitting there smiling. Because I knew something she didn't. Clause 12 existed. And I was ready to use it.